Our next speaker is truly a national treasure. And how did he become a national treasure? For standing up for what was right. And that's really all it takes. Every single one of us has that ability, that capability in us to become a national treasure just for doing the right thing. For standing up for our natural rights that are given to us by God, not by government. And when the tyrants come, to not take a knee. To stand there and say, not today. Not on my watch.
That's right. You guys, let's welcome Ammon Bundy.
Let's get a standing ovation. Stand up to your feet.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for the weather because I know that everybody here wants to be here, that they're not just here to be entertained. I think that for every one person that is here, we can count 6 and know that we're here for the right reason, so thank you. I think about my father and his great example to me. I think about my grandfather and his great example to my father and to me. And so on and so forth. I can list my generations on my father's side, clear back about 4 or 5. All the way from Abraham, and then all the way to actually Isaac, Abraham. Believe it or not, that's in my that's actually the name of my forefather. So then it goes to Roy. I don't know where they got Roy from. Then it goes to Dave, which is my grandfather, and then Cliven and myself. And of course, I have a whole bunch of brothers, and I have a whole bunch of sisters. And I'm extremely grateful for them. And I see the power, and have experienced the power myself, of being part of a family and understanding how important it is. And I've seen in my life my father act in the defense of my own life and in the defense of my own liberty. And I also have seen my father act in defense of all his neighbors' liberty and in the defense of his countrymen's liberty. And I say that because there was a time, I've never been a time in my life that I haven't felt that, liberty and rights and all the things that we've talked about so dearly here today haven't been important. But there was a time, shortly before 2014, when I saw what was ramping up against my father, which ultimately amounted to 213 armed federal agents surrounding my family's ranch with snipers on the hills. And their very own words said that if we resisted in any way, that this would be another Waco or Ruby Ridge. And I watched how my father was undeterred from that. How he was not intimidated. And how he knew that he had to continue to stand. But I was a little hesitant. In fact, I was living in Arizona, about 8 hours away. And I knew at some point that I was going to need to go to the ranch and stand with my father. But I said to the undersheriff of Clark County, Nevada, I said that this is not worth dying over. In a long conversation, about 2.5 hours with the undersheriff. But when I went to the ranch and saw what was really happening, I drove down into the valley that I loved so much. I could see the mountains in the background, those mountains that I spent so many hours and days in my entire young life on. And then I could see the foothills, and I saw armed guards on every entrance of the range with their assault rifles. I saw helicopters flying and MRAMs. And the best way to describe it is it was like a scene out of the movie Red Dawn. That's what it was. And when I drove down into the valley that I love so much and saw what was happening, I can tell you, my heart changed completely. And I knew at that point that it was worth dying for. But it left a hole in me that was hard to explain. And that night, as I actually camped out in the little trailer I was in, I opened the back, and I could still see the lights of the guards, and I could still see the activity of the different, force out there. And this hole was in me because we couldn't even step off the paved road without being either beaten or even killed. And earlier, my brother had actually happened to him. And they had taken him for a period of time. We didn't even know where he was at, and they beat him up. And I won't go into the details there, but we knew that they were a force that was going to be reckoned with. And so I sat there, and I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how to resolve this feeling that I was feeling. I know now that it was a loss of freedom, is what it was. It was that taking away of something that was mine and my family's and all people's across this country. That's what it was. But I didn't know what it was at the time. And so as I tried to reckon with that understanding and feeling, I couldn't do anything but pray. I didn't know what else to do to try to solve what was happening with me internally except for to pray. And I prayed for several hours. I prayed the longest I'd ever prayed at the time. And I was asking God, what is going to happen here? You know, what are we to do? We're just a family. But we've been here for 140 years ranching. 5 generations. Since 1877, this ranch has been here, and now they're trying to take it by force. We know that it's ours. So what are we to do? And what are you going to do? And I'm trying to understand this. And praying with the sincerity of my heart, with everything I could give, to try to understand. And I'm here to tell you today that the Lord began to help me to understand. He began to give me understanding of what was about to happen. It was just that. It was just understanding. It was just a knowledge of a little insight of what was about to transpire. And the best way I can explain it is in threefold. First, I began to understand, this was early in the morning, probably 2 o'clock or so in the morning, began to understand that the Lord was going to protect my family. And that was a great relief to me, because they literally had snipers on the hills surrounding our home. And they had already brutally beat up my brother and had taken him. They had threatened our lives and put snipers, red dots, on our little children. So I knew that they were serious. And so when he helped me to understand that he was going to protect my family, that was a great relief to me. This was the creator of this universe was helping me understand that he was going to protect my family in this situation. Secondly, I began to understand that he was going to bring a lot of people. He was going to touch hearts across this country, and he was going to bring them, and that we needed to be prepared. That we need to be prepared for those thousands of people that would come. And interesting enough, earlier that day, my father, who I hadn't talked to him, and before I even received this understanding, my father understood that as well, because he took his old pickup truck and his horse trailer. He went down to Las Vegas, Nevada. It's about 80 miles from our ranch, and he filled the horse trailer clear full of pallets of bottled water, because he felt that there was going to be a lot of people as well. And this was when there was just almost nobody there except our immediate family and a few community members that were supporting us. So in the third part, which is, I think, is the most applicable to the reason why I'm standing in front of you here today, is because the Lord helped me understand. And when I say that, I hope that it's not weird to you. I hope you can feel that what I'm saying to you is honest. I truly felt these things. I don't know exactly how to explain them. I don't know exactly how it all happens. But I began to understand that what was about to transpire was going to be a pattern that we must follow in this country and across the world in order to preserve liberty, in order to be free. Now, the thing about it is, this was early in the week, and I didn't know what that was. But I understood that what was about to transpire shortly was a pattern that we must follow as a people in order to preserve liberty. And that, my friends, is why I am here today. I am here to explain to you what that pattern is. And so that we can follow that pattern, and that we can preserve our liberties and preserve our freedoms. Now, I am going to share with you something that I brought that, to me, is actually very sacred. Because as many of you know, in early 2016, we saw another ranching family in Oregon that was, the very same thing was happening to them that was happening to our family. And we had been greatly blessed, by thousands of people coming to our ranch and surrounding us and protecting us. And when we saw this family that was in danger, I felt moved. And I call it a providential urge, but I felt moved to go and to protect this family, do the best I can to protect them and bring light to them and draw people around them so they also could benefit from the protection of the people. And so I went to Harney County in Oregon and did the best I could. And while I was there, I was given several things. And I want to share them with you because they become, I guess, very sacred to me. Now, I'm going to have to open these up, so I'm going to set this down. Now, I have shared these before, but not with very many people. So, first of all, I have someone who wants to stand up. This is my beautiful wife. So, first of all, hold on to this, but I'm not going to explain that yet. First of all, a man who came up to me and he said he was in the Army, and I haven't served in the military, so you're going to have to forgive me of terminology and so forth. But he had this on his head, and obviously he was an airborne in the Army. And he felt like he really wanted to give me something. And he felt like it needed to be something that represented his service. And so he took his hat off, which I could tell meant a lot to him. And he gave it to me. And he said that what we were doing, or what I believed we were doing, is what you were doing. And he handed me this hat. So then, and I don't have it, I wish I did, I had a retired police officer come up to me, and he reached in his pocket, and he had his duty badge. And he gave it to me. And he said, I served as a police officer for 20 years. But what you're doing is more important than anything that I have done. And he handed the duty badge to me. And I hesitated. I didn't feel like I should take it, in a sense. I mean, I could tell he carried it with him all the time. And he gave that to me. Now, not to make you too mad, but when I was arrested, they took that from me and they never gave it back to me, along with my wedding ring that I had never taken off since the moment my wife put it on me. But we'll talk about that later, right? So, let's get this one here. Then a man came up to me at a meeting way out in the middle of Harney County. I'm talking about in the middle of, I won't say nowhere because it's a wonderful place, but it was way out there. And he was in a wheelchair. Both his legs had been amputated. And he lost those legs in the service of his country. And this was his uniform, his dress uniform. And you can see here, each one of these represents 4 years, correct? And so he had served for at least 20 years. And he insisted that I took this. And I will never wear it. I'll never wear it. But it is a great honor to me and to all those who stood and are willing to stand. And he shared this with me as tears flowed from his face, expressing that he believed what we were doing was more important than what he did for 20 years. Now, I don't know what he did for 20 years. I just know that this man was sincere and understood what was happening. And so, then, I had another man, in full uniform, came to me. He gave me this. United States of America. You've seen these boxes before, right? And who knows what the purple star or purple heart is? Purple heart, right? It's a great honor. And who knows what's above the purple heart? The next award. Are you sure? The Bronze Star. And this man served in multiple campaigns. He fought in multiple campaigns for many years. And he was awarded the Bronze Star. And in order to be able to be awarded the Bronze Star, you have to do something of valor. And he came to me and insisted that I take this. And he gave it to me because he believed that what we were doing was at least equally important to what he has been doing and the reason why he received this award in the first place. And I hesitated. I knew what this must mean to him, right? What this must mean to his family. And I don't even know the man's name. And he's giving it to me. And so, it is a great treasure to me, and it's not just mine. It is not. It is actually as much yours if you are willing to defend your neighbor as it is mine. This is not just for me. But what a great honor it is for me to hold it and to be given this. Now, as wonderful as this is, I want to share with you something else. You know what this is, right? American flag. But this is a little special because inside of it has the casings, open shells. As a man come up to me and said that his brother had lost his life serving his country in the belief of defending his neighbor. And this was draped over his casket during his funeral. And it was folded up with the rounds that were shot at his funeral, and he gave it to me. And he said a very similar thing than all the rest of them. That he felt that what we were doing was why his brother was willing to give his life. And he gave it to me, and then he wept on my shoulder. Now, imagine what this must mean to that man. And what this must mean. I can't even tell you his name. I was arrested afterwards. All my stuff was taken. I did take his name. I took all their names. But it was all taken from me. And then I spent 2 years incarcerated, away from my beautiful family, my wife. Never was able to touch my family or see them directly, and I tell you these things because what these men were representing is what the Lord was trying to help me understand that night. And if I can, and I pray that I'll be able to do so, I can connect the dots here with you. Because what the Lord shared with me that night did transpire. It transpired that week. What happened was, my father, understanding his rights clearly, said no. He said, no, you will not take my ranch. He said, you will not take it because I understand that it's mine. And I understand that if I give it up, that others, you will do the same to others. And therefore, as he said, clear back in 1998, he wrote a letter to the governor of the state of Nevada asking for protection. And he says in that letter that just as Rosa Parks said in the front of the bus, he goes, I must take that front seat today. And that is what he did. And he said, no, these are mine. And then when they came to take it, and I say they, when they came to take it, he tried to make it as public as possible with as little of ability that he had at the time, we had at the time. And what happened was thousands of people came all around and surrounded my family. At first it was just a small little group. The first few days there was, literally MRAPs were going back and forth while they were shooting our cattle on the hill with helicopters. They were burying them in mass graves. They were running the mother cows to death or leaving the baby calves out in the desert. They were destroying our water infrastructure. Some of that water infrastructure is over 100 years old. They had the handprints of my forefathers in them, and they were destroying them with their backhoes. And there was maybe at first 30 or 40 people coming. And then the next day maybe 60 or 70. And then the next day maybe, 100 or so. And then they began to escalate their force. And we began to see that we had to, be a little more persistent with our rights. And so we began to protest them more and step across the paved road onto the dirt. And so what did they do? They sicked their dogs on us. They threw us to the asphalt. They tased us. And we filmed it all. And next thing you know, hundreds and even thousands of people are coming to the ranch. And it changed everything. It changed everything. As soon as people responded, right? And it wasn't just the militia, although they did respond. It was mothers and fathers and pastors and people from all over the country came. And it only took their presence. And guess what? All of a sudden, now what happened was, they all retreated. What I mean by those who were, beating us, sicking dogs on us, killing our cattle, destroying our property, snipers on the hills. All of a sudden now, they are retreating to their military type base. And I say military type because I don't want to insult the military. But it was a military operation, military type operation. And now they retreated. We know that there was at least 213 of them. They retreated to their base because there was thousands of people at the ranch. And it all of a sudden flipped everything. Now they became accountable for what they were doing. Now they began to ask themselves what they were doing was right, even in amongst themselves. But what did it take? It took hundreds and thousands of people coming together and defending one person's rights. Now that is what the pattern is. That is what it is. And the more I understand it, and the more I understand history, I realize that the pattern has never changed.
Right.
It's never changed. It has always been that. It has always been one person willing to say no, to stand for what is his or hers. And when those come to take it, for whatever reason, we could list a million reasons. Elitists, power-hungry people, extreme environmentalists, whatever it might be, when they come to try to take it, then people surround them and defend their right.
That's right.
That has always been how rights are preserved. Now, so that is the pattern. And I would love to say, oh, it's something grand, here's the silver bullet that's going to take out all our problems in one shot. But it is not. And you know what? This pattern is the same pattern that our children will have to use to defend their rights. And their children will have to use. It is the same pattern that our fathers and forefathers have had to use. And it is the same pattern that was believed and is what was expressed in these gifts. It was the same pattern. When someone is in need, when someone's rights are being infringed upon, we must respond. We have a moral duty to respond to our neighbors in need. And it is the only way that we will maintain liberty in this country.
Right.
I promise you, because our systems of governments, our systems that have been set up to protect rights are being deteriorated and corrupted to the point where they have become the system that is taking rights.
You're right.
And so when that happens, and you could say, oh, this is where we went wrong, this is what happened, and all of that may be very well true, but it really does not matter. It does not matter. The only thing that matters right now is that we recognize what rights are, that we stand for them, and that we come to each other's defense when needed.
That's right.
And that's what it is. There is no people on this beautiful world that God gave us that cannot be free if they would exercise that pattern. There is no people. It does not matter where they live. It does not matter who they are. It does not matter the color of their skin. If they will exercise that, where one person or multiple people say, this is my right, and I will stand for it, and others stand around them. When they do that, they can be free.
Amen.
So, that is the message I leave with you. That is why I came here today. There's many, many ways which this can be done. But it's most important that it happens in your communities, right? Because that is where you know people, that is where you can respond quickly, and all of this other stuff is all just preventive. And what I mean by that, as important as it may be, voting is just a preemptive measure. The courts are just a preemptive measure. The Congress and legislatures and all of this is just preemptive measures. Even the Constitution, as powerful and wonderful as it is when we understand its principles and live by them as a people, is just preemptive measures. Because what it comes down to is you and I standing with our neighbor.
Yeah.
It really comes down to that. Come down to standing with our neighbor. And I can testify and tell you today that that is the only reason why my father is still ranching today. He still ranches. Even though they killed around 60 head of cattle, my father has recovered. He's restored the water rights, or the water infrastructure. He built his cattle herd back up. He began to continue to develop even further parts of his ranch. And it was because of the pattern which God showed me that night and was implemented without any of us really knowing. It was because you and many others came to the defense of my family. And that's how his rights are still being exercised today. That is why he didn't lose them. And there's no other reason. No other reason. Because guess what? The governor felt he would not respond to us. The sheriff felt would not respond to us. The legislatures felt would not respond to us. And then finally, and I'm so grateful, the people finally responded. They responded to us. And because of that, my father is still ranching. And our ranch is in the middle of the Mojave Desert. I mean, I swear my forefathers, they had to say, well, this is the most hot, miserable, dry place ever. Now let's try to raise some cattle here and live. It takes 100 acres to sustain one cow. But guess what? My dad raises enough cattle to make him a living. It's not a very great living, but it is something that we've done for 6 generations. 5 generations, I guess. And something that he loves. And it's something that is his. And should not be taken from him. Even though all the political realm changes, even though even if the laws change, they're his. And they should not be taken. And so we must recognize rights, what they are, who they came from, and when they're trying to be taken. And we must respond to our neighbor. And I want to thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for standing out here in the cold and trying to understand, trying to support, trying to show your concern for our country, because it is in terrible shape right now. Terrible. I won't go into that. But we cannot fix it. We cannot fix it in Washington, D.C. We cannot fix it even here in Idaho. We cannot fix it in our counties. We cannot fix it in our cities. We cannot even fix it in our homes if we are not willing to cast out all fear and say no, and then stand around each other. And I leave you with these thoughts. And I want to express with all the emotion that I can, all the energy of my heart that I can, that this pattern that I understood came from God. It came from the creator of this world, this universe. and that it is truth. It is what we must do, and that He loves us. He cares about us. He wants us to choose Him. And He knows that one of the most wicked things that any person could ever do is try to force another person to be good. And I leave those things with you in His Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.